So, if you're a super skilled technical professional, an engineer, a developer, a scientist, you've probably had this thought at some point: why isn't my talent enough to get ahead? Well, today we're cracking open a kind of survival guide for navigating the very complex and, let's be honest, often baffling corporate world. I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? You might be the best coder, the most brilliant designer, the sharpest problem solver on your whole team. But for some reason, promotions, influence, and the really cool projects seem to operate on a completely different set of rules. You can tackle any technical problem thrown at you, but the human systems inside a company, they can feel completely impossible to solve. And here's the core idea we're going to explore. A corporation isn't really a neat and tidy meritocracy. It's a jungle. It's got its own ecosystem, its own hidden rules, its own political food chain. But the good news is there are patterns. You can think of them as life templates that repeat over and over. And this is your guide to spotting them in the wild. Okay, so let's dive right in with a fundamental problem, a real conflict at the heart of so many companies. The very personality type that creates breakthrough innovations is often the same personality type that just doesn't fit into the corporate structure. It's called the innovator's paradox. And wow, this quote from Albert Einstein just hits the nail on the head. Innovators, the real game changers, they thrive on independent thinking. They question everything. They have, let's say, a healthy disrespect for the status quo. But you can imagine, inside a rigid corporate hierarchy, that can be a big, big problem. You see, the personalities that drag the human race kicking and screaming into the future, the ones who are maybe a little irreverent, a bit eccentric, and super confident in their own ideas, are often labeled as difficult within a company. Their absolute need to challenge every assumption is the very thing that threatens the chain of command. So, if you're going to survive in this jungle, you first need to learn how to identify the local wildlife. So let's pull out the field guide and break down some of the most common management archetypes you're almost guaranteed to encounter. First up, we've got the cheerleader. This is the manager who is just relentlessly positive no matter what, even when the engineers on the front lines know the project is, a total dumpster fire. Now, the idea is to keep morale high, but it has this really devastating side effect. It completely destroys their credibility with the people who actually know what's going on. Next, let's talk about management by secrecy. The principle here is simple. Knowledge is power. And this whole technique works by controlling who knows what. It's a way to stop people from asking smart questions that might challenge a decision. And it works so well because there's no free press inside a company to keep managers honest. And a close cousin to that is management by misdirection. Think of it like a magician's trick. Look over here, not over there. For instance, a big status report might highlight a delay from an outside vendor. Now everyone's focused on that, and nobody notices the real problem. The internal team isn't even ready for that part anyway. It's a really slick way to shift blame. Oh, and then there's the old classic, management by pressure. The logic, at least to the manager, seems flawless. If we're behind schedule, just apply more pressure. But it's a blunt instrument, and it almost always leads to engineers cutting corners, quality taking a nosedive, and eventually total burnout. It's almost as if they think sleep's only purpose is to be a reservoir of extra time for them to tap into. And finally, a truly unforgettable species, the petite Caesar. This is the manager who just has to put their mark on everything. They'll make these tiny, meaningless changes to your work, a different word here, a slightly different color there, not to add any value, but just to show their dominance. This is called Caesar marking, and its only goal is to show everyone who owns the turf. Okay, so we've identified some of the patterns out there. Now for the big question. How do you actually navigate this terrain? This next part is all about survival tactics, some really actionable, if surprising, advice for dealing with these political dynamics. Now, this piece of advice might sound completely backwards, but you gotta hear me out. Constantly arguing with your boss, even when you're 100% right, is almost always a losing game. The real path to freedom is to actually agree with their suggestions. Yeah, really. This builds credibility and trust, which, ironically, makes him much more likely to just leave you alone and give you the autonomy you need to do your job the right way. So what about experience? Doesn't that count for something? Well, this quote just cuts right through the noise. Experience isn't the same thing as skill. In the corporate jungle, seniority is often just a political tool for assigning value. It's absolutely no guarantee of actual competence. And here is a perfect story of this in action. A supercritical task was given to a really skilled but junior engineer. Senior management saw the plan and immediately rejected it. They couldn't trust someone so junior. So, what was the solution? They revised the schedule to officially assign a senior engineer to the task, who then just assisted the junior engineer, who, of course, did all the actual work. It's all about political perception, not reality. Okay, we've covered how to spot the patterns and how to navigate the politics. Now, let's try to put it all together into a real strategy for not just surviving, but actually thriving in this environment. The big takeaway here is that your technical skill on its own is not enough. You absolutely need a powerful advocate. That's someone in those high-level closed-door meetings who will speak up for you. And just as important, you have to avoid making enemies who could quietly block your promotion. It really comes down to understanding the hierarchy, protecting the credit for your own work, and remembering that success just breeds more success. But climbing that ladder leads to this really critical choice, and it's what's been called the real tragedy of corporate engineering. The good engineer loves the hands-on technical work, but can get stuck, pigeonholed. So, to get more money and influence, they often become the bad manager, basically selling their soul for a pay raise, leaving the work they loved, and becoming just another replaceable bureaucrat who hates their job. And that brings us to the final, and maybe most important question. This field guide, it can help you play the game. It can help you navigate the corporate jungle and climb that ladder. But it leaves you with a much deeper question to answer for yourself. It's not just about learning how to win. It's about deciding if the prize at the top is what you truly want in the first place. What does success really mean to you?